And now to a story from my colleague Tim Clauser, who is our Eastern Washington correspondent, but he also covers a lot of statewide issues. And this is a pretty big story that he covered today. There are 8 firefighters who were working at Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue who, during the COVID mandates for vaccines, requested religious accommodations. You remember many people, and maybe many of you, sought either a medical exemption or religious exemption or both from your employer, such that you did not have to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Many of us had objections to that. Many folks ended up leaving their jobs. We've talked a lot about that as well. So now Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue obviously rejected these 8 employees' request for a religious exemption. They have fought this through the courts. They have lost through the district court process, but now there is a request for the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in on this. And they have taken up some other appeals for the COVID-19 vaccine mandate issues. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So here is my colleague Tim Clauser and his discussion today with an attorney who's representing these 8 clients in their case that will hopefully be considered by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Their claim was we needed to protect the safety of people around them. And so the fire department said, hey, we've got this pandemic going and we're afraid or concerned that they're going to make other people sick when the firefighters are not vaccinated. So even though they could, take extra precautions like mask up and that sort of thing, we're not going to allow that because there's an extra bit of risk and we're not sure that. So that's the characterization of the court.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is these firefighters went and worked in nearby districts that did accommodate them. So nearby fire departments and nearby other organizations, and there was no problem. There was no issue. And not only that, but Snohomish engaged in these mutual aid agreements where, so let's say there's an emergency and they send fire department, they'll also send, an ambulance, or a neighboring fire department will send their own vehicle. And those people were not required to be vaccinated. So they've got their own firefighters who they required to be vaccinated, shoulder to shoulder with other workers that were not vaccinated, or at least they had no way of knowing one way or the other if they were. And if the danger was really so great, then Snohomish would not have done that. But instead, Snohomish, or what they call servers, Snohomish Regional Fire Department, they said, no, this gives us an excuse to lay off these firefighters because they won't get vaccinated, even though they were placing their own employees in the same scenarios that they would be in around unvaccinated workers. So the way we see this is there was no real justification for holding them out for 8 months. And the Ninth Circuit held, well, but they had a reasonable concern that there might be an undue hardship. Whereas, if they're in a different circuit, no, they actually have to prove that someone would have in fact been harmed in order to justify not granting the accommodation. And we know they can't prove that because nothing happened. All these individuals went to nearby fire departments and worked for the whole 8 months that they were laid off. And then at the end of the 8 months, Snohomish Fire Department brought them back. And so all these guys that were laid off for 8 months then came back. They were never required to be vaccinated. And so, well, clearly you're able to accommodate them because you did accommodate them 8 months later. And yet still the Ninth Circuit said, no, we're letting them completely off the hook because they had a reasonable concern. And we think that's insufficient. We think, and now that there are 3 circuits on one side and 3 circuits on another, we just want the Supreme Court to clear that up and to say whether reasonable concern is sufficient or if the employer has to prove more. And we believe the employer has to prove more.
So Tim's story is up at the Center Square Washington page. I encourage you to check that out. And for much more on all this income tax and our exclusive with TJ and all the breakout that we know is going to come fast and furious between, well, probably now and about an hour from now. Thanks for watching. Join us again for tomorrow's episode of Washington in Focus Daily.